The Tribunal of the Holy Office of the Inquisition, commonly known as the Spanish Inquisition, was established in 1480 by Catholic monarchs Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile. It was intended to maintain Catholic orthodoxy in the kingdoms and to replace the Medieval Inquisition, which was under papal control. It became the most substantive of the three different manifestations of the wider Christian Inquisition, along with the Roman Inquisition and Portuguese Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition may be defined broadly, operating in Spain and in all Spanish colonies and territories, which included the Canary Islands, the Spanish Netherlands, the Kingdom of Naples, and all Spanish possessions in North, Central, and South America. The Inquisition was originally intended primarily to ensure the orthodoxy of those who converted from Judaism and Islam. The regulation of the faith of the newly converted was intensified after the royal decrees issued in 1492 and 1502 ordering Jews and Muslims to convert or leave Spain. The Inquisition was not definitively abolished until 1834, during the reign of Isabella II. After a period of declining influence in the preceding century, the Spanish Inquisition is often cited in popular literature and history as an example of Catholic intolerance and repression. Modern historians have tended to question earlier accounts concerning the severity of the Inquisition. Henry Carman asserts that the myth of the all-powerful, torture-mad Inquisition is largely an invention of 19th-century Protestant authors with an agenda to discredit the papacy. Although records are incomplete, about 150,000 persons were charged with crimes by the Inquisition and about 3,000 were executed. Previous Inquisitions. The Inquisition was created through papal bull, ad abellendam, issued at the end of the 12th century by Pope Lucius III as a way to combat the Albigensian heresy in southern France. There were a huge number of tribunals of the Papal Inquisition in various European kingdoms during the Middle Ages. In the Kingdom of Aragon, a tribunal of the Papal Inquisition was established by the Statute of Excommunicamus of Pope Gregory IX in 1232. During the era of the Albigensian heresy, although not an inquisitor as canon lawyer and an advisor to James I of Aragon, Raymond of Peñafort was often consulted regarding questions of law regarding the practices of the Inquisition in the king's domains. He lawyer's deep sense of justice and equity, combined with the worthy Dominican's sense of compassion, allowed him to steer clear of the excesses that were found elsewhere in the formative years of the Inquisitions into heresy. With time, its importance was diluted, and by the middle of the 15th century, it was almost forgotten, although still there according to the law. There was never a tribunal of the Papal Inquisition in Castile. Members of the episcopate were charged with surveillance of the faithful and punishment of transgressors. During the Middle Ages, in Castile, little attention was paid to heresy by the Catholic ruling class. Jews and Muslims were tolerated and generally allowed to follow their traditional laws and customs in domestic matters. However, by law, they were considered inferior to Catholics and were subject to discriminatory legislation. The Spanish Inquisition can be seen as an answer to the multi-religious nature of Spanish society following the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula. For the Muslim Moors, after invading in 711, large areas of the Iberian Peninsula were ruled by Muslims until 1250, when they were restricted to Granada, which fell in 1492. However, the Reconquest did not result in the total expulsion of Muslims from Spain, since they, along with Jews, were tolerated by the ruling Christian elite. Large cities, especially Seville, Valladolid and Barcelona, had significant Jewish populations centered in Judea, but in the coming years the Muslims were increasingly subjugated by alienation and torture. The Jews, who had previously thrived under Muslim rule, now suffered similar maltreatment. Post-Reconquest medieval Spain has been characterized by Amerigo Castro and some other Iberianists as a society of convivencia, that is, relatively peaceful coexistence, albeit punctuated by occasional conflict among the ruling Catholics and the Jews and Muslims. However, as Henry Carman notes, so-called convivencia was always a relationship between unequals. Despite the legal inequality, there was a long tradition of Jewish service to the crown of Aragon, and Jews occupied many important posts, both religious and political. Castile itself had an unofficial rabbi. Ferdinand's father John II named the Jewish Abiathar Crescas to be court astronomer. Anti-Semitic attitudes increased all over Europe during the late 13th century and throughout the 14th century. England and France expelled their Jewish populations in 1290 and 1306 respectively. At the same time, during the Reconquista, Spain's anti-Jewish sentiment steadily increased. This prejudice climaxed in the summer of 1391 when violent anti-Jewish riots broke out in Spanish cities like Barcelona to linguistically distinguish them from non-converted or long-established Christian families. New converts were called conversos, or New Christians. According to Don Juan Crescas, persecution against Jews began in earnest in Seville in 1391, on the first day of the lunar month Tammuz. Further, the violence spread to Córdoba, and by the 17th day of the same lunar month, it had reached Toledo in the region of Castile. Further, the violence had spread to Mallorca, and by the first day of the lunar month Elul, it had also reached the Jews of Barcelona in Catalonia, where the slain were estimated at 250. So, too, many Jews who resided in the neighboring provinces of Lerida and Gironda and in the Kingdom of Valencia had been affected, as were also the Jews of Al-Andalus, whereas many died a martyr's death, while others converted in order to save themselves. Encouraged by the preaching of Ferran Martínez, Archdeacon of Urcia, the general unrest affected nearly all of the Jews in Spain, during which time an estimated 200,000 Jews changed their religion or else concealed the religion, becoming known in Hebrew as anusum, meaning those who are compelled. Only a handful of the more principal persons of the Jewish community managed to escape, who had found refuge among the viceroys in the outlying towns and districts. Forced baptism was contrary to the law of the Catholic Church, and theoretically anybody who had been forcibly baptized could legally return to Judaism. Legal definitions of the time theoretically acknowledged that a forced baptism was not a valid sacrament, but confined this to cases where it was literally administered by physical force. A person who had consented to baptism under threat of death or serious injury was still regarded as a voluntary convert, and accordingly forbidden to revert to Judaism. After the public violence, many of the converted felt it safer to remain in the new religion. Thus, after 1391, a new social group appeared and were referred to as conversos or New Christians. Many conversos, now freed from the anti-Semitic restrictions imposed on Jewish employment, attained important positions in 15th-century Spain, including positions in the government and in the church. Among among many others, physicians André Laguna and Francisco López Villalobos, writers Juan del Enciana, Juan de Mena, Diego de Valera and Alonso de Palencia, and bankers Luis de Santangel and Gabriel Sanchez were all conversos. Conversos, not without opposition, managed to attain high positions in the ecclesiastical hierarchy, at times becoming severe detractors of Judaism. Some even received titles of nobility, and as a result, during the following century some works attempted to demonstrate that virtually all of the nobles of Spain were descended from Israelites.